Hey folks, welcome back to another Dice Tower preview. I'm Mark, and today we're taking a look at Dungeon & Co., which is brought to you by We Ride Games. It's for 2 to 4 players, ages 14 and up, and games generally run about 30 to 60 minutes. You're hired, congrats! You've been hired as a dungeon contractor by the evil empress Hornspike to build the deadliest dungeon in her kingdom. Your sole mission here is to protect her gems from any pesky adventurers that wander in. As you construct a bigger and better dungeon, it will attract more powerful adventurers. And if your dungeon ends up with the most gems at the end of the game, you win. Plus, you won't be impaled by Empress Hornspike. May the best player win and also live. So yes, you're in the construction business. You're trying to make the most deadly dungeon so you can appease or appeal to the Empress and be her true dungeoneer, so to say. Now, the thing is that this dungeon, you're gonna have this basic structure. In the middle of your dungeon is where all the adventurers are going to travel, where you're gonna be trying to do damage to them as they move through. And if you don't do damage, then they're gonna be stealing some of your gems, causing you to have less, obviously. And if you ever lose all your gems in the course of the game, you are eliminated. You're out of there. So you'll see in your dungeon there are 3 sections. So you have 3 opportunities in each of your dungeons to eliminate these heroes as they move through. So you have your top tier, middle tier, and the last exit area of your dungeon before they escape. Now, some of the adventurers are going to be obviously basic, some are going to be a little more advanced, and then by the end of the game, you have to deal with these big heroes that are fully equipped to take on your dungeon. So the game takes place over a series of rounds, and as you move through those rounds, you're going to be dealing with level 1 adventurers, level 2 adventurers, level 3, and then finally the heroes will come into your dungeon. So all these different types and levels of adventurers and heroes are going to grant you all kinds of rewards if you're able to defeat them. Some have a single heart value you have to defeat. Some have multiple heart values you have to defeat, and you always go left to right as you defeat them. If you ever can't do enough damage to them, they regenerate when they move to the next level of your dungeon. So you have to go all in or not at all. So this is the basic structure of your dungeon, and to start things off, you're going to get 7 gems, which you'll place at the bottom, and then also 2 boulders that you have to place in your dungeon. They do take up space, but there are ways to augment how and what you do with these boulders. But you will roll a d20 to place them in your dungeon. And then you're also going to get a 1x1 tile to start. And the thing here is that there are several different tile types. There's 1x1s, there's 2x1s, and 2x2s. And through the course of the game, you'll see that we've set up a marketplace. And the 1x1s are always going to be free, but the others are going to cost you coin. You get coin in this game by taking out adventurers moving through your dungeon. So those more sought after tiles, those more powerful tiles, you're going to have to get some coin in order to get them and populate your dungeon with them. There's lots of icons to take note of. Now, you're looking for damage, obviously, and there's 2 main ways here. You'll see an orange icon and a green icon with a number value in it. The orange is melee damage, so those always have to be placed on the inside track, especially if it's a 1x1. You have to place it on the inside track of your dungeon in order to do that damage to the heroes or the adventurers. And you also have a green splat or a green icon that is for ranged attacks, and it's really mostly important for those 1x1 tiles, placing them on the inside or outside of your dungeon. So again, range attacks have to go on the outside and the melee go on the inside. Now, of course, for those 2x1s and the 2x2s, they're just going to fit into the spaces that are set forth on the board. And they're going to do all the different types of damage and so forth. Now, all those different icons on these different types of tiles really come into play. Some are traps, and they're going to do different types of damage in different ways. Some are going to be like a treasure chest trying to entice the hero, and you'll roll a dice to see how much damage it will actually do. Now, there's also icons like for the necromancer that will cause you to draw another adventurer to come into your dungeon as soon as you place it. So there's some icons will activate immediately, some come after, some give you bonus coins for defeating heroes or adventurers, and some of the creatures or tiles will be more powerful, really delivering a blow when you need it, but they do have limited use. You'll see an icon represented by a shield showing how many uses it has. Now, you don't have to use it every time an adventurer moves through your dungeon, but you may save it and use it at strategic times to do that massive amount of damage as they move through. Now, the thing is, you can keep track of that just by using the gems they provide to see how many uses have been played. But once it's all used up, that tile then is flipped and no longer can be used and holds a spot of your dungeon. The game also features some really fun artwork and the different types of adventurers around that, and even tongue-in-cheek style from the rulebook to the Contractor's Guide to Common Invaders 2nd edition. New and improved now in Coastal Wizard measurement system. So they went to a lot of work here. All the different stats and so forth in this book just adds that next level of theme to the game. So as you can imagine, there's lots of different types of icons, how the different tiles play into each other, and some can augment off of each other. So those are all things to keep in mind as you build out your dungeon. Now, gameplay here is super straightforward. Based on the round you're in will determine what level of adventurer comes into play. And the round marker shows you how many cards you draw as well. They all start at the top of your dungeon. Once the adventurers have been placed at the top of your dungeon, then it's time to go to the marketplace and add more tiles to your dungeon. Now again, the 1x1s are going to be free, but those 2x1s and the 2x2s are going to cost you coin. And early on in the game, especially in the first 3 rounds, you're probably not going to have a lot of coin to do some of those bigger tiles. So those 1x1s are coming in very handy to kick things off. So once you've picked your tile and placed it, then it's time for the adventurers to journey through and you have to stop them. Hopefully you've done enough damage. Now, if you look at your adventurers, you'll see that there's a red heart. That's the amount of damage you have to do, or they will regenerate when they get to the next level of your dungeon. So there's also blue hearts though. Those are cumulative, so you can keep adding damage to it as they travel through your dungeon and eventually destroying them. And then the reward value is in the top left corner. So once you destroy an adventurer, you can either get coin, or you might get a gem, or you might get a choice to pick one or the other. But if you fail to deal with these adventurers as they move through your dungeon, when they reach the end, they're going to escape and steal one of your precious gems. Now, along the way, again, things are going to ramp up. You hope you've built out your dungeon correctly in order to deal with the ramping up adventurers. And then finally, in the final round, you deal with the big heroes. This is your last chance to get some additional gems. But also, one thing we did not cover is the fact that you have these decree cards. These are really personal objective cards, and you hope that you fulfill it through the course of the game and get the rewards set forth. Usually it's more gems, but here we have flip over 2 orc tiles this game. And again, orcs are more powerful, so they're limited use, so you do want to flip them over, again taking up space in your dungeon, but this would get you 2 more gems at the end of the game if you survive all the way through. So that's really the basics of the game. And again, there's lots of different ways to build out these dungeons, lots of icons to tap into, and you can use boulders to your advantage in many cases. So they're not only taking up space in your dungeon, you definitely can use them and so forth. So I really like the different aspects of the different tiles and how you can build out your dungeon every time you play. All right, folks, just a reminder once again, this has been a Dice Tower paid preview, and everything you've seen here has been in prototype form, so keep a close eye on the campaign for any changes that still may occur. Now, with that said, once again, this is definitely a family weight game. Building out your dungeon is very puzzly, and that is one of the aspects I really like. Every time you play, your dungeon is very different, as the whole dungeon tile market is fluid. It's always changing, and it also gets fully refreshed as you move through the different levels of the dungeon. Also, if you happen to have the least number of gems, there's a slight catch-up mechanic here where you'll get additional coins if you have the least number of gems. So I like that aspect as well, but really the tiles that I find to be the most fun are the ones that allow for dice rolls to do damage to the adventurers as they move through. And again, that big boss battle against the hero at the end is a ton of fun. But folks, ultimately, if this looks like something of interest to you, I'm sure they'd appreciate your support. So I think that's it for me, and until next time, we'll see you at the table.